I don't know what to say about this book. Hi. You feeling better? Huh? This book baffles me. Because, for one, I cannot figure out if this book exists. And I'm going to skip a lot of what I normally do here because there's just no way to talk about this book the way I normally do. Now, for those of you who watched my TBR, thank you for suffering through that horrible audio, by the way. But for those of you who've watched my TBR, you know that one of the books I was most excited about this month was Yuma's Crime Wave by Marvin Noe. Because I'm from Yuma, that's my hometown. The funny thing was, I could find nothing about this book online. It wasn't on Goodreads. I couldn't find the book at all when I directly searched for it in Google. And so I had no knowledge about this book going in. All I knew was it was set in Yuma, and I'm from Yuma. Here's the thing, though. The more I looked into the book, the more confusing that it got. See, at the start of the book, we have a list of all the previous works from Marvin Noe. And these previous works followed the detectives in this book, I think, anyways. But, so I was able to actually find a lot of these other books. I actually found them on Amazon. And they do detail the events that are referenced in this book. But as far as this one goes, Yuma's Crime Wave, I still can find nothing on that. In Amazon, it literally stops at Death in the Desert, the last book here. And from the read of it, what happens before the events of this book happened. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe I got some kind of uncorrected proof. I'm reading some kind of arc that was sent out and was never meant to hit the shelves the way it is. That ARC, for those of you who want in book lingo, is advanced reading copy. Normally they're a lot better than this. I've read a few ARCs myself, so I thought maybe I got a hold of that, and would it be fair for me to review it in that case? But again, there's literally no hint online about this book. There's not even press releases. There's not even a hey, this is gonna be the next book, but it's not out yet. And unlike a lot of the other arcs, which, have outright down here, uncorrected proof, not for commercial sale, I actually have the Raybearer arc back there. This doesn't have that. In fact, this actually looks like it was signed by the author himself, which means he gave this book to someone thinking it was complete enough to be worth signing. And further than that, when you get inside, it looks like it has all the copyright information, stating that the copyright is in 2018. So, it even has an ISBN number. So, I'm legitimately confused here because I don't know if I can review this book properly in that regard, because I would hate to do this big long review on a book that was never meant to be seen in the shelves. That being said, this book needs a lot of work. I'm not going to sugarcoat this. I only read one chapter. That one chapter I read, every one of these tabs is from that one chapter. That one chapter I read has 3 pages of notes. 3. For reference, that one chapter is 18 pages long. So basically, for every 5 pages, I had another page of notes to say. And I'm not just talking, you'll see a little bit later on when I review Patriots, that one color tends to be predominant in certain books. Because, my typical color system, orange is for clunkiness, blue is for objective airs, pink is for plot holes, and green is just for cringe or bad moments. Typically, one of the things that green will often be the most predominant color when it comes to bad books. But you'll often also see a fair amount of orange with a bit of blue if it's written well enough, and a fair amount of pink. But no, this book is like a fucking rainbow. I cannot stress enough how bad this book is. This is the first paragraph. 13-year hard-nosed veteran Detective Salvador Diaz had spent 6 months as temporary police chief in the city of Yuma, Arizona, after former Chief Anderson was arrested. From day one, he hated the position of police chief. He took the position of police chief only because the department needed leadership, while a search for a permanent police chief was conducted. The politics and negotiations involved in the police chief's job was not the right position for Diaz. He hated each day of his 6 months of acting police chief. Each day proved to be more strenuous than the day before. He was like a fish out of water. Negotiation with the city council and fellow officer frustrated him each and every day of his 6 months tenure. Even cutting aside the fact that the dude repeats police chief like 6 times in one paragraph, that entire paragraph is just saying the same thing over and over and over. He doesn't like being police chief. Trust me, it's very clear he doesn't like being police chief in this book. He says it so often. Like, I'm not even joking. Like, oh my god, the amount of times he just sits there and says, I don't like being police chief. 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 It sucks. Being police chief is awful. I don't like being police chief. It's just like, he's a broken record about how much he does not like being police chief. This is also probably the most blue I've ever used in a book, and I'm only on chapter 1. Because there's so often that things should just be cut, or things that are objective errors. It's just like scenes happen that have absolutely no point to to happen. Like, in this chapter, he goes on a vacation to Hawaii, constantly complains about how much he loves... I say complains, but constantly spouts about how much he loves Hawaii, and then goes back home. What was the vacation for Hawaii? Nothing. Nothing. It adds nothing to the story, except from one maid who tells him, you're not living life unless you get married and have kids. And I'm like, I would fucking report you to the hotel. Holy God. Oh my God. These chapters are awful. Like, the way they repeat themselves constantly. Like this. You look refreshed. I'm serious when I say it is nice to have you in the trenches with us again. I thought you might become our permanent police chief. By all accounts, you did a fine job as police chief. Had I been the person choosing a permanent police chief, you would have been my choice. Thank you, my friend. The position of police chief was not for me. Long term, it was not a good fit for me. Political pressure is not something I enjoyed. When it comes to negotiating with people, I am terrible. Have you heard any rumors about who my next partner will be? It's just awful, and obviously, as you can tell from the couple things I've read there, the dialogue in this book is so robotic. Like, I probably could have an AI read a lot of these quotes, and it would not sound out of place. It would sound like someone put them in an AI. In fact, if this didn't have the copyright of 2018, I would go so far to say Marvin Noe wrote this using AI. Because there is just no way a human being can write this badly, even on a first draft. Like, I don't want to be rude and say that, but oh my God. There are literally plot holes in chapter 1. Like the fact that the new police chief who actually does get put on, the Susan Wagner, says, am I going to have problems with you being passed over for the job of the permanent police chief? No, he's like, no, ma'am, I didn't even... No, ma'am, I didn't even want the job of police chief. If they'd offered it to me, I would have turned it down. I hate it so much. Okay, but are you sure I'm not going to have any problems with you being passed over for the job as police chief? Because I saw your name on the list. No, ma'am, I don't want to be police chief. You know, it's just like, that conversation happens 3 times. Or a way to show that, you know, our character is such a great detective that he literally hears 5 sentences of information about a case and immediately says, did you try to do this most basic version of detective work? And they're like, oh, you're a genius! And they catch the guy 2 days later. Literally, they're investigating a stolen jewelry case and they can't, you know, get a break in the case. So he's like, did you check at the places where they would sell these jewelries they're stealing? No, I didn't think of that. I'll go check it now. Not to mention, as excited as I was about this being set in Yuma, it becomes somewhat clear later on that Marvin Noe is not familiar with Yuma. Because there's just like, it's small little things here and there so far. Because like there's one thing where there was like, they have a farmers, they have this little festival. So in Yuma, when I was growing up, they would like almost every week on the weekend, they would have some form of fair or, market that would get set up on Main Street. It happened so frequently that it was actually stranger to go down Main Street and not see a market set up. So when they're talking about having, like, searching these markets for the jewelry, they're like, well, let's go ahead and get you a time and place statement from where these markets will be set up. And it's just like Main Street. They're always on Main Street. I've never heard them being set. At the time, I never had heard them being set up anywhere else. So it's just one of those. I don't know how to talk about this book because I already have so much to say, and I'm on chapter 1. But if I go into this book and I sit there and just go deep into this, if I just sit there and rail this book as hard as I can because of how badly it's written, and then I find out later that this was a first draft that he sent out to be beta read, I would feel awful. But at this point, I don't know. So, yeah, that's what I gotta say in regards to that. I don't know what to say. So, you know what? I'm just gonna go through the notes I did make and skip over the ones I've already hit. So, obviously, I talked about the first one. Police chief is repeated 5 times in the first paragraph. The words police chief. Talked about a lot about how they keep repeating things. One of the weird things that came up here was, like, okay, note 3. One of the weird things, this is my first green note. One of the weird things that came up was, at one point, the Diaz said, hold on, let me see. What exactly did he say? Nothing is wrong. Read this email. You, young lady, will be getting a new boss. I am elated. This is not a position I belong in. I hate kissing everyone's ass. I'm sorry. I apologize for my language. I never meant to insult you. As someone who had a father in the police department and met several of the police department people there, no one cared about language. No one cared about language. Apologizing for the language you use would get you mocked more than using that language. So, and, okay, there was another scene here where that secretary he was talking to, it tells it anachronistically. Which, it's a stupid scene that's just meant to stroke off the character some more. But one of the things that happens in this book is after he's passed over for police chief, despite the fact, again, he tells everyone who will listen he does not want to be police chief and didn't like the job, we cut forward randomly till later that night where the secretary is watching the police chief being announced and, them saying that this will be our new police chief. And they make no mention of his work, Diaz's work as police chief. And so the secretary calls him like, I'm going to call and complain because you were the most amazing police chief ever. And they should have given you the credit. And it's just like, I'm like, oh, okay, so we just suddenly flash forward. And then after that, no, we suddenly just cut back to her talking to him in the previous scene where he accidentally said a bad word and apologized to her. And it's like, what? Like, you have this block of text that takes place hours from now that breaks up an existing scene for no other reason than to stroke your character's ego. Like, there's no page breaks. It's just, later that night, like, okay, yeah. That evening, and then it just randomly cuts forward to, randomly after that scene where she calls him and says, they should bow to you for your police chief work. He just randomly goes to, Victoria returned to the outer office to resume her work. Immediately, Diaz set up a much-needed month-long vacation in Hawaii. From the context of the scene, again, there are no page breaks here. From the context of the scene, all of a sudden we're teleported back to the police station where the two of them were talking earlier from the flash forward so Diaz can set up a Hawaii vacation. Like, I cannot stress enough to you how bad that is. Then there's the Hawaii thing where it should have just been cut because there's nothing there but, a random maid deciding that I am offended by the fact that you do not have a wife and child. Mr. Diaz, you are missing out on a large portion of life. Intimacy is good. I have 4 kids. I'm very happy. So yeah, I'm not joking when I say that. There's another scene that should have been cut where Diaz comes back to Yuma, randomly helps a patrol officer with a traffic stop, and that's all that happens. There's a repeated insistence that although Diaz loves going to Hawaii, he doesn't like going sightseeing. He just likes laying on the beach and sunning. And people call him boring for that, but I'm just like, you're boring and stupid. Because you can just go lay on a beach in San Diego, which is like a 2-hour drive from Yuma, for a lot less money than it would take to fly to Hawaii and book a hotel room for like a month. Okay, this book also does that weird thing that I've been noticing a lot of bad books do, is where they tell a story that's supposed to have like some sort of theme to it, but it doesn't make sense for any kind of theme. There's a story where he tells about how stubborn his old partner is. It's totally not foreshadowing that this old partner is going to become his new partner again. And he tells a story about how a guy is trying to move a mule. The story goes something like this. A fellow walked past a man cussing and whipping his mule. Jenny, he called her. The old gentleman continually whipped her to get her to move. Jenny still refused to move. The man walking past the pitiful sight ran. By the way, he spells sight in this book as S-I-T-E, not S-I-G-H-T. So, that's a typo there that I forgot to mark. Anyways, where was I? And stopped the man from whipping her. Stop that, he yells. You are going to kill your mule. That is no way to treat an animal. Get off the trailer, and I'll show you how to get your mule to do what you want. First, the passerby hugged the mule. Second, he spoke to her very gently and massaged her neck. Then he said, Jenny, we are going to have an understanding. You won't be asked to do more than you're capable of. The guy glances around. In the head of an alley was a pile of old lumber. He strolls over, picks up a 3-foot 2x4, walks back to the front of the mule. He hauls off and clobbers her with the 2x4 right between the eyes. The owner of the mule screams at him to stop. You're going to kill my mule. Relax, mister. I'm only getting the mule's attention before I tell her what she has to do. Again, I don't know what the point of the story is, because he tells the story in response to trying to relate to how stubborn his partner is. But it tells more like a joke. Like, some guy comes by and says, you can't beat your mule, then proceeds to beat the mule anyways. And it's just one of those, if someone can explain what this is supposed to be, what the story is supposed to be, I don't know. The book feels the need to explain why people prop up their feet like this. Like, it literally goes in a paragraph-long description about, he did this because it was the optimal way for him to relax, placing his heels upon the desk and pushing himself back until he cannot lean back anymore. This was the optimum way that he could find relaxation. And it's just like, you don't need to explain why someone puts their feet up like this. It's obvious. It's supposed to be relaxing. People do this to show they're relaxed. The child would know this. At this point, by Orange Tab 10, I was at the point where if I saw Police Chief again, I was going to burn the book. Because he never once shortens it to just Chief. Except for the first paragraph, where he briefly says Chief Anderson. Because every other time he says Police Chief, Police Chief, Police Chief, Police Chief. Let's see. Oh, here we go. Here's this lovely paragraph, which starts out bad and gets worse. No way, man. Mendoza and I had some ugly times working together. More than once I felt like strangling the woman. She was, without a doubt, the most argumentative woman I have ever met. She was worse than my ex-wife. An inexperienced partner is supposed to listen to the veteran detective so they can learn as they work various cases. She was promoted long before she was ready to be a detective. Her promotion was just to fill a gender gap in the department. I guarantee listening was on the bottom of her list. Our receptionist downstairs would have made a better partner for me. Starts out clunky and just devolves into full-blown sexism by the end. Figure that out for me. One of my favorite things is the amount of hypocrisy in this book. Also, one of the things I love... Hold on, let me see if I can find it before I really go into this point. One of the things I love here is that we're clearly supposed to see Diaz as this awesome, hard-nosed detective, which, by the way, he uses hard-nosed a lot when I looked up his works. He basically describes every detective that he's written about as hard-nosed detective. No. But anyways, we're supposed to see Diaz as this hard-nosed, awesome detective. But he is an asshole. Like, again, chapter 1, and this is one of the things he says to his new police chief. I'm telling you the truth. I will also tell you, no matter what you do or how well you do it, certain people will criticize you. Those that criticize will speak louder than those who praise your work. Hopefully you are capable of accepting criticism better than I was, or am, for that matter. When I'm criticized, I want to strike back. Oh, by the way, he says it like this. When I'm criticized, I want to strike back. As temporary police chief, I couldn't strike back. As a detective, if someone criticizes me, look out. I will make their life miserable by investigating them from here to eternity. Yeah, great way to make me love your character, no. Say that if someone gives him criticism, he is literally going to abuse his power. No, there's no distinction here. Not if someone insults me. No, it's if someone criticizes me. Which means they are justifiably talking about his downfalls and things he needs to work on. You so much as tell this man he needs to throw away garbage instead of littering, he is going to make sure your ass goes to jail for any small infraction that you take. Great hero. I totally am rooting for this guy from now on. Again, all of this is from chapter 1. I'm not going to rate this book until I finish it, but yeah. So this might be something I do over a series of segments. I talk about each new chapter and just how much worse it gets. Or maybe it'll get better. Maybe it'll get better. I doubt it, but maybe. So yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and say that's why you're not getting a full review today. So next week I'll be reviewing a book I actually did manage to finish and is somehow better. It'll be Patriots. It's going to be the villain of the arc. But anyways, with that being said, just remember, with every book comes an adventure. And sometimes they're just confusing as hell. What am I supposed to do with this?